This lesson is going to be completing the JavaScript Roulette game. So this game, we can dynamically adjust the number of squares that we're creating on the board. So on the game board, we can set those parameters within the JavaScript Game object, and that will update the number of squares that we're going to see on the screen. All of the squares are able to be interacted with, so you could click them and you could place your bets on those elements. And then once you've placed all of your bets, you have an option to do the spin. And if you do land on the cell that was selected, then it gives you it returns back a win for you, and you get the number of coins that are available. And then once you start betting again for the next round, it will clear out the existing coins and the win cell, and then allow you to play through the game again. If you lose, then it's going to go purple. And I'll tell you, sorry you lost, you did not bet on square number 5. So behind the scenes, we've got the JavaScript. We've got a function that's going to be running the check. So whenever we click the spin button, it's going to do the disabling the spin button, selecting a random value from all of the cells on the screen, and then running through and updating the visuals for the winner, clearing out the existing bets, and providing the win and loss messages to the user, and also updating the score for the game. We've got a creating the game board function, and this is the core function of this application, where once we're generating the game board, we're setting the background color of either black or red. We're selecting that we're setting the bet, and then also adding an event listener to the elements as we're being created, and applying the click conditions to reset if there is a winner, and then also updating the conditions if it's been clicked to either remove or add the coin to the screen. And this is all done. We're setting the property using the CSS grid, which gives us a flexible grid design, all done with JavaScript. And by the end of this lesson, you'll be able to create your own version of this game. We're going to continue where we left off and creating more elements. And this one is going to be a button. So creating an element and also attached to game area. And the element that we're creating is going to be a button. And the label of the button, so within the HTML of the button, let's add in spin. And let's also attach a class of btn to it. So that gives us a button that we can spin with. And within the creating of the board, let's also add a function that will update score. So whatever the current score is, we've got the score being output within the score element. So creating that element and updating the inner HTML. You could also update the inner text as well for this. So we'll just output the value of score, and then whatever we've got for game. And within the game, let's create a value for score. So this is the number of coins, and maybe we want to call it coins instead of score. So we've got a value of coins that we're going to output, and coins. So whenever we launch, we'll create the game board, but then we'll also update the score to whatever the current value is. And then when we press spin, this is going to do the spinning and provide the output. So we need a way to present the result. So whatever we've got the random result and attaching it to the game area, let's add this as a div. And right now I'll just say press spin. And we can set this up as a message to the user. And maybe we'll just give it a name as well of message for the object. So it'll just give us some information about what's happening. So now that we've selected and we've done the spin, and actually we can move the total down here at the bottom, as we're going to be using the total to do a random value for the spin as well. And what we want to do is we want to produce a random value that's going to be one of the results here on the game board. So depending on how many cells we have here, we want to check to see if one of them has been selected and if we've got a bet on any one of those. So let's create a way for the user to create bets on the cells that we created. So creating and adding an event listener. So to the element that we've created, let's add an event listener. And the event that we're going to listen for is going to be a click. And this click event is going to give us the ability to add bets to the elements. And we'll create a temporary, within the temp object, we'll set a default value for bet to be false. So if there is a bet already in place within temp bet, then what we want to do is want to give the user the ability to remove it. So we'll select the bets that are contained within the main temp element, and using the query selector, select the element by the class of bet. And then we just need to simply remove that element from the page. And also set the bet to be back to be false. And if it already is false, then we're going to set the bet value to be true and create an element that we're going to add to the page, and we'll call that value bet. So this is just going to be adding and creating an element. So using the create and the same format that we've done in the other parts of the lesson, we're creating the element, and the parent is going to be this temp object, and it can be a div, and within the div, let's just add in a $sign and the value of bet for the page element. So now when we click it, we're adding the element, and it looks like we're throwing an error in the console. So let's check out what the error is. So it says cannot read properties of null reading remove. So it's having trouble selecting that element with a class of bet. So let's take a closer look and just make sure that the element that we are selecting does have a class of bet. So it is there, and it does have a class of bet. So before we try to remove it, let's output it into the console, and we'll see what we're getting as a result. So this element has, and when we click it again, we're returning back null. So we're not able to select the element, and that's because we're missing the dot for the class of bet. So now when we click it, we're selecting the element. So let's remove that where we're doing the troubleshooting, and we could comment out the console message. So now we can add and remove the bets to the page, or to the elements that we're selecting. Let's apply some styling to the bet so that we're going to position it as absolute, so that it will be on top of the parent, which is the box. So for bet, set the position absolute, and setting a max width. So set the max width to 25 pixels, and maybe a little bit of padding. And let's also set the left position to 0. And because we want it centered, we're also going to set the right position to 0. And then if we do a margin and a margin left to auto, and a margin right to auto as well, that will allow us to center the element when we're adding it. Let's double check, make sure that we're returning back the right bets. So let's update the event listener and add in the properties. So for bubbling up, so set that to be true. And now we'll try it again. And when we click the elements, we'll update and we'll click the text, output the text content that's contained within the element that we're selecting. Also for the parent, let's add in for the box, the position relative, and set the position to be relative so that whenever we do add the dollar signs, they're going to be going into the parent. So now we are able to add them in as we click them, and they're showing up there. So let's continue to update the styling for the bet, and we can set the background color. So let's set it to yellow. And for the overflow, we'll set the overflow for hidden, and then round it with the border radius and set that to 50% for rounding it. And we also should set the color to be black so that we can always see the dollar sign. So that way they're all coming up the same. If you click it another time, it's going to remove it. So this gives us the ability to add the bets to the screen, and we want to subtract from the current score. So whenever we do place a bet, and we want to always update the score as well. So whenever it gets clicked, so within the, when we're adding the bet, select the value of the score, and actually the value of the game coins. And when we're removing the bet, so game coins minus, and when we're, or actually this should be plus when we're removing it, and minus when we're adding it. So now when we add it and we remove it, we can see the coins is changing. We also want to track within the array where we've placed the bets. So creating, and let's update the game, and we'll create an array, and this array is going to hold where our current bets are sitting, and we can use that and update the score with the current bets array. So when we do the console log and the game select object, that's going to output the array. So we want to add to the array the value of the temp, and that's going to be already contained within I. So when we're removing, when we're adding, we've got the game sil and push to the array whatever that we've got for the value of I. So this will give us a full listing of the elements that are going to contain the bet content. And when we're removing it, we also need to remove it from the array. So just as we're adding it to the array that's going to have the listing, we also want to take a look and see if we can remove that particular value. So we need to select and get an index value, and that's going to be contained within the game cell array, and doing the index of, and what the value is that we're looking for is the value of I. So we're returning back the value of I, and then if index is greater than -1, so if it's -1, that means that we didn't find it. And if it's greater than 1, then we're going to select that same array, and using the splice, so we can set the index value, and there actually should be a dot there because we're chaining it together. So the value of index, and splice out that value from the array. So let's see what happens. So we've got an array with the 3 items. We remove it, so we're removed out from the index value of that element. And remember, these values are going to not be exactly what's being shown here. We're going to have +1, because when we're outputting and constructing them, we're adding the +1. And behind the scenes, we're going to be using whatever the index value is, starting with 0 from where we're creating the elements on the page. So now, once we're able to place the bets, let's do where we're going to create the spin, and the spin is going to trigger checking and creating a random value that we're going to check against all of the elements that we have in the, or all the numbers that we have within the array, and we're going to see that if it exists within that array. So for the button, add an event listener, and the event that we're listening for is going to be a click on the button, and I'll call it spinner. So it's going to be the function that's going to get invoked. And now let's create that function that's going to get invoked. So function spinner whenever the button gets clicked. And what we want to do is we want to check the bet array. So looping through and just making sure if that value is, so let's first we'll select a random value. And we can use this with the math floor, and then multiplying the math random value by the value that we have for total. And the math floor will bring it down from 0 to whatever the value. So if we've got a value for total where we've got x times y, which is going to be 35, then we're going to get a random value from 0 to 34, and that's going to match with the values that we've been collecting within the array where we've got the game select. So that's our random value. We can log that out into the console. And we want to check to see if we do have a match. So checking to see within the array. And we can use another array method, which is contains. And this will return back a separate, either a true or false. So we can do the includes on that array. And we'll just do a when, and using the game select and then includes, and check to see if it includes the random value. And then we can console log out the value of when. So let's add in and spin. So we got a value of 22, and that would have been that the 21 on the so let's add in some more and clear it and do a spin again. So that's looking for the value of 27. So let's actually update these to have the random value, and we'll do +1, and then I'll also add in to the index that we're tracking it. So just to avoid any confusion. So let's see what we've got. So we've got 20, 21, 20, 18, and we'll do a spin. So the result was 22. Let's add in some more coins and spin. So again, the result was 28. So again, it was false. Spin. So this time it was true because we did have money on 0.32. So that's working. And within the message area, so let's output a message for the user within the message. And we can have a condition. So if when, then message inner HTML, and using the backticks, winner on, and then the value that we had for the random. Else, then we're going to have lost, sorry, you did not bet on, and whatever the random value is. So let's see what happens when we've got the output for the spin. Lost, sorry, you did not bet on 35, but not bet on 25. Let's add in a few more coins. We did not bet on 27. We did not bet on 23, so not having any luck here. So winner, we were on 9. So it looks like it is working, that we're able to pick up that which cells we've got the coins on, and then match that according to the winner. So another thing that we need to do is we need to multiply that by whatever the total, so add to the coins, and we're going to update the score once again. And that will be the update of the score. And let's calculate out the win amount. And that's going to be whatever the total is. And you can adjust this as needed, so you don't need to have it exactly as the total. You can make some adjustments, but I'm going to leave it for now as the total. And then we'll take the game coins and add to the game coins the value of total, or the amount, the win amount. You won, and the value that we won there. So just outputting all of that messaging to the player so that they know exactly what the result was. So let's try adding a bunch of coins, do a spin, and we can probably spin a few times until we get it right. So winner on 31, you won 35. So that looks good. So what we also want to do is we want to clear out that array. So we want to empty out all of the items in the array. So let's do that, where we've got the array and set that just to be blank. And that actually should be done across the board. So whether we won or lost, we want to clear out the current content. And also we want to update the score as well. And we want to loop through and get all of the game area elements that have a class of bet and just simply remove all of those. So we can do that from the game area, or we can actually do it from the output. So let's select the elements that we want to remove, and that will be output as the parent. And then using query selector all, we're going to select all of the elements with class of bet. And then taking those elements, looping through each one of those. And we want to just simply remove out those elements as we select them. So just as we did over here, where we're doing a remove, let's can select those elements and do a remove of them. So this should remove any of the bets that we place, regardless of if we win or lose. So winner on 23, you won 35. And looks like we're throwing an error there. And before we remove the element, let's select the element and we'll log it out into the console. So we also need to reset and remove out the elements with the box that have a temp bet value. So we want to loop through all of those elements as well. And that's where we were throwing that error, because we're not able to remove it because it didn't actually exist on the screen. So let's loop through those as well. So these are the boxes, and using the output query selector box. So selecting all of the cells that we've got on the screen. And then for the boxes, do the same thing for each. And for each one of those elements, we can select the element and we can reset its value for the bet to be false. So that gives us the option to remove out and continue to doing the betting, and it clears the coins that we've added to the screen if we don't win or if we win. And we can also update the element, updating the color of the winner as well. So let's do one more where we're going to select and add all of the elements into an array. And that's going to, again, be within the game object. So within the game else, when we're creating that temp element, we can select the game else and push the elements in. So pushing the temp element, that will give us an array of all of the existing elements. So we can loop through those game elements and reset them all to false. In addition, whenever we've got the winner, then we can make a selection of the winner using the index value -1 and set the style, background, color, and let's set the background color to green for the winner. So see how that looks? So that gives us number 16, set it to green. And let's also add a key in here. Which would be 0. And then for the game winner, set the random value there. And then if there is a value for the game winner, when any of them get clicked, we'll check to see if there is a value for it. And if there is, then we select the element from the game's element using the game winner as the index value. And this actually should be -1. So this is going to be the game winner index value. So setting the game winner and style, and then we need to reset the background color. And so that means that we also need to know what color we want to set for the background and also for the color. So let's track that into the game style. I'll call it game styler. So this will be an array. And this is where we need to get the current background color of that element, that one. And then also within the array, we'll do the color of the element. So that will track it within a game styler array and add that styler as an array. And this is just giving us the ability to store. So that will be black and that will be white. So those are just the default values so that we have something in there, and we're overriding that with the game styler. So that gives us a value that we can then use to reset the background color. So that's game styler 0. And then let's set the color back to whatever it was within the original before we changed it. So spin, so it turned out green. And it looks like we're not actually turning it back until we click it. So those ones are still remaining because we're not tracking those. So we need to make sure that we have a way that whatever the last one is, and we can't actually spin again until we set a bet. So let's disable the spin button. So btn disabled equals true. So we can't click the button until we've placed a bet. And once we do place a bet, so once there's a click made, then we're going to enable the button. So spin, and actually this button should now be disabled. Because we're doing the spin. So disabled will go back to true. So also, let's keep the coin on there as well. So we don't want to remove the coin or the bet so that the player can actually see the coin still there. So let's also make sure that we're not removing it. So I'm going to do this selection first. We'll remove out all of the coins, and then we'll add the coin back in if it's a win on the selected page element. So selecting from the page element, if it's a win, we're going to add the coin back in. And the parent of the element is going to be this one, the same as the random value. And so we'll add in the bet element. So only the ones that are the winners should stay. And let's add some coins. And it doesn't look like I'm having much luck here. So that green one did actually stay. And it looks like there's still a bug in the application, because when we ran it, so that one stayed, and when we clicked off of it, we want to remove out that bet value as well. So whenever we're checking to see the game winner, and we should also select that game winner and set it back to false. And then within the game winner, we want to select the element and remove out the element. So just as we did here, we're going to remove that element, and this is the main parent. So I'm going to set a temporary, and I'll just call it parent temp to reference that element. So we don't always have to keep writing that. And I'll just simplify the way the code is being written. And that should give us the ability to remove any ones that are existing. So try it out, and let's see if we throw any other errors. Do a spin, and that didn't work. And it looks like there was another error there, so continue to do some troubleshooting and debugging. And let's only remove. So in that case, we didn't have a value there. So we'll only do the remove if there is an element value there. So that's why we were throwing that error. So try that one more time. And let's hope for a winner this time. So we did end up with the winner, and when we click, that's going to remove the coin. So that gives the user a better experience, that if they did have a coin on there, it's not going to disappear, and we can remove it whenever the player continues to bet. So that will indicate that either it's more of a clear winner or not. And you can also do a separate color. So over here, we're setting the background color to be green. So we can also adjust this depending on if it's a win or not. So if it's a win, then we'll set it to green. And if it's a loss, then let's set it to purple. So until we actually win, that's when we're going to only see the green background. So it looks like we were able to set the green background there. And let's make one more adjustment where we've got the default to be false. So when we do start the game, we don't have a default value. And then play through it several times, make sure that there's no more bugs or issues. And then you're ready to even customize it as needed to create your own version of the game.